Hello everybody, and thank you for watching this video today. Today we're going to cover Safe and Ready, the next generation volunteer training program that we've put in place to cover the details of Innisfil Community Church's prevention policy. Wow, that was a mouthful. But welcome, thank you for taking the time. If you are a current volunteer, thank you for the service that you've provided to our kids, our youth, or our vulnerable adults through our church programs in the past. And thank you for signing up again to continue to help in those areas in the future. If you're a new volunteer to this area of ministry, thank you for your willingness to serve and to be a part of the ministries of Innisfil Community Church. So first of all, who am I? My name's Glenn Moss, and I'm involved with the discipleship and training programs at the church. And it's a pleasure to be able to do this for you today. Let's talk about the importance of the training. So when we talk about our kids' ministry, it's important for parents and for us as a church as well to know that the kids, youth, and by extension, vulnerable adults that come to activities within our building or church-sponsored activities off-site feel safe and know that there's a plan in place to make sure that their children are in a safe environment. So that's why we're doing this training. That's why we have a prevention policy in place, so that you are aware of the different ways we need to interact with the vulnerable people that are in our facility, at our programs, and also that the support is there for you as a volunteer, and there's protections in place for you as well. So that's the stuff that we're going to go through today. If you have a pen and a piece of paper, great. If you don't, I would highly suggest, you pause the video for a minute, go grab a pen and a piece of paper, because there is a test that you need to do after you've completed the video. And we will highlight some of the items as we go through the video that you should take notes of, because it'll help you on the test later. So if you don't have it, pause the video and we'll see you back in a minute. For those of you that are still here or just coming back, we are ready to move on with our training. So first of all, let's talk about our responsibility. So we maintain as a church a zero tolerance policy for abuse and harassment of vulnerable persons. And that's by anybody, by employees, by ministry partners or volunteers, as we call them, or by church members, attendees that may be in the building at the same time that there's events for children and youth taking place. So for that purpose, we require that anybody that's directly working with or in contact with vulnerable persons in our facility, in our programs, be appropriately screened and appropriately trained. Our responsibility to vulnerable persons consists of this. So vulnerable persons, first of all, is kids, it's students, it's adults with disabilities, and it can be the elderly. They are important to God, and because they're important to God, obviously they're important to us. But sadly, because they often lack the strength, awareness, or knowledge, they are referred to as vulnerable persons. They are frequently taken advantage of, and they can even be victims of abuse, depending upon the setting that they're in. So as a church, we need to be proactive in protecting them and providing a safe environment so that the closeness of the trust between that vulnerable person and between God remains secure, and the relationship with God is not put at risk by anything negatively that they may experience once they're in our care and inside of our doors. We also have a responsibility to each other. So when we serve vulnerable people, we need to have the security, and you need to have the security as a volunteer or as an employee at the church to know that there's procedures and there's policies in place that will minimize any possibility of a false or wrongful allegation coming against you. This in turn will help maximize your confidence in your role, knowing that we have a plan in place to protect the people that we're ministering to, the youth, the kids, vulnerable adults, but also it protects you as an employee or as a volunteer. We also have a spiritual and a moral responsibility as a church. So we recognize that we're a reflection of God's love to those that are in our care and that come inside our doors. And we need to take that responsibility seriously. Micah 6:8 presents a challenge to us. It says, "He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God." So Micah suggests that the Lord requires 3 things of us. First of all, to act justly. We must work for justice, seeking to promote the truth and speak out on behalf of the vulnerable. Secondly, we must love mercy. We need compassion as the bedrock of all of our work. Thirdly, we need to walk humbly with our God. Every area of our lives need to be marked by humility, righteousness, and integrity, as we are to be true reflections of God. We also have a legal responsibility to ensure that we have a plan in place that will protect the vulnerable persons that we minister to. Our legal responsibility includes being accountable for the actions of our pastors, our employees, our ministry leads, our ministry partners, volunteers, and church attendees, meaning that the church could be held liable for any of the actions of those folk that take place in our facility or off-site at church events. Therefore, because of this legal responsibility, and because it's the right thing to do, we will not tolerate any form of abuse of any vulnerable person in any of our ministries and programs. We recognize that abuse is a serious issue that requires urgent attention. The Child and Family Services Act expresses mandatory reporting laws regarding child abuse. Consequently, it is our policy that any employee or ministry partner who has reasonable grounds to suspect that a child is suffering or may have suffered from abuse shall immediately report to authorities the suspicion and information on which it's based. So now let's look at the definitions of abuse for a few minutes. Child abuse. Child abuse refers to an act committed by a parent, caregiver, or person in trust, which is not accidental and which harms or threatens to harm a child's physical health, mental health, or welfare. Vulnerable adult abuse. Vulnerable adult abuse refers to a form of mistreatment by one individual that is not accidental and that causes harm to a vulnerable adult's health or welfare. Adults who are mentally disabled are most vulnerable to abuse. Sexual abuse. Sexual abuse involves any contact, activities, or acts between a child and an adult or older, more powerful person, a mentally vulnerable adult and another more powerful person, or mentally capable adults that are in any way non-consensual. Children are not developmentally capable of understanding or resisting sexual contact and may be psychologically and socially dependent upon the offender. This is often true for many mentally vulnerable adults. So sexual abuse does not only involve physical sexual contact. There's some examples of sexual abuse that are listed on your screen. Emotional abuse. Emotional abuse happens when a person uses words or actions to control, frighten, or isolate someone, or take away their self-respect. Emotional abuse is sometimes called psychological abuse. This emotional abuse can include threats, put-downs, name-calling or insults, constant yelling or criticism, making fun of or preventing someone from practicing their faith or religion, destroying belongings or threatening to do so, hurting pets or threatening to do so, bullying, intimidation, or humiliation, including on the internet. Many forms of emotional abuse are not crimes, but can be signs that the abuse might escalate. However, some forms are crimes, such as threats to harm a person and criminal harassment or stalking. Neglect. Neglect is any maltreatment or negligence that harms a child or a vulnerable adult's health, welfare, or safety, or fails to provide them with basic needs. Neglect can include actions such as failing to provide proper food or warm clothing, failing to ensure proper supervision, failing to provide adequate health care, medication, and personal hygiene, abandonment, health hazards in the home, providing inadequate emotional nurturance, ignoring a child's need for contact, affirmation, and stimulation, failing to enroll a child in school, or keeping a child home from school repeatedly without cause. Parents have a duty to care and provide for their children. Child abandonment and failure to provide life necessities are crimes in Canada. Adults also have a duty to care for their dependent parents. Neglecting to care for or arrange care for dependent parents is a form of neglect. Harassment. Harassment involves a repeated or persistent physical or verbal action that is unwanted or that causes a person to reasonably feel attacked, demeaned, intimidated, or cause them to fear for their safety or the safety of someone known to them. In Canada, criminal harassment includes repeatedly following a person from place to place, repeatedly communicating with a person, either directly or indirectly, watching the home or place where a person resides, works, carries out business, or happens to be present, or engaging in threatening conduct directed at a person. Some possible indicators of abuse do not necessarily constitute proof that a child or other vulnerable person is being abused, but they should serve as a warning to look further, ask questions, or seek some assistance in determining whether or not a person needs help. Some of the possible indicators of abuse involving vulnerable persons are failure to thrive, depression or passivity, abnormal, hyperactive, or disruptive behavior, destruction of property, running away, fractures, lacerations, bruises that cannot be adequately explained or have explanations that are improbable given a child's developmental stage, alcohol or drug abuse, self-destructive behaviors, including self-mutilation and eating disorders, sexualized behavior or knowledge of explicit sexual behavior. In order to serve our vulnerable community, we have some requirements. Our potential ministry partners or volunteers must have 1. Regularly attended the church for at least 6 months. And that could mean regularly attending church services, some of the activities we have going on, or involved in other volunteer capacities within the building. The key is that we know the individual for a period of time of 6 months, more than the activity that they were involved in for that 6 months. And that's because a lot of the risk comes from someone that may view a church as an easy setting to get involved with so that they have access to vulnerable persons in that setting. So that's where the 6 months knowing the person beforehand comes into play and is very important. If a member at Innisfil Community Church, the person needs to be a membership in good standing. They need to be able to support the vision, values, and constitution that we have at the church. They need to support the leadership and be submissive to the leadership, pastors, and board of the church. Also, they need a criminal record check that comes back, which is clear of accusations and convictions of crimes against vulnerable persons, violent crimes, or other relevant crimes. It's important to note individuals who have been accused or convicted of any of these crimes will not have any involvement with vulnerable persons. Prospective ministry partners, volunteers, are to submit to the recruitment and screening process managed by the ministry lead of the department or ministry or activity that they wish to volunteer with. Each applicant will complete the following steps after having attended church for a minimum of 6 months. You need to complete a new volunteer application form, which includes a release agreement, a volunteer information checklist, volunteer agreements, reference worksheet containing references to be contacted by the ministry lead, a personal interview, a criminal record check for those 18 and older, training, and a quiz also needs to be completed. This video satisfies that training component of the requirements. The training has to be done yearly by everybody, new or existing volunteers. There's also lifestyle expectations and signed agreements that go along with that. Upon completion of the training, there's some additional paperwork to complete. A volunteer information checklist needs to be completed, which self-discloses any past or current activity, events, or conditions that may interfere with becoming a volunteer. An abuse prevention and reporting agreement confirming that they have read Innisfil Community Church's protection policy and they understand and agree to comply with those policies. A covenant agreement stating they agree to live a Christian lifestyle that's honoring to God and worthy of spiritual leadership. An application agreement stating they have provided correct information, including the police check that we talked about, and agreeing to a contact of references and verification, and a confidentiality agreement stating they agree to keep information they learn about vulnerable persons and other church members and attendees confidential. So with that, let's look at the supervision ratios and some of the details. So supervision of minors. To provide adequate supervision of children, one of the following must be in place. A minimum of 2 ministry partners, volunteers, need to be present, except in emergencies, or 1 adult ministry partner is present in a classroom with large windows or with the door open and a hall monitor circulating to protect from false allegations. Ministry partners, volunteers, between the ages of 11 and 17 may assist only under the supervision of adult ministry partners. Ministry partners, volunteers, must be 18 years of age or older to supervise children and youth on their own. Child ratios. So it's our goal for any children's ministry event or setting to comply with the following ratios. We need 2 ministry partners for every 6 non-walking infants. That's birth to approximately 18 months. We need 2 ministry partners for every 10 walking toddlers. That's approximately 18 to 48 months. We need 2 ministry partners for every 10 kindergarten-age children. That's 4 to 5 years of age. And 2 ministry partners for every 20 elementary-age children. That's 6 to 11 years of age. Youth ratios. So it's our goal for our youth ministry events to comply with the following ratios. 2 ministry partners for every 15 junior high students, grades 6 to 8. 2 ministry partners for every 20 senior high students, grades 9 to 12. And there must be at least 2 unrelated ministry partners at all events. Both male and female ministry partners must supervise events where there are both genders present. And we also recommend that there be at least a 5-year age difference between those ministry partners and the youth that they supervise and interact with. Off-site and overnight trips. So for off-site trips, drivers, and this is a key, important to highlight, take notes for, drivers for church events should be 25 years of age and above. Now, because off-site trips and overnight trips could have many different nuances come into play, rather than list out or try to list out some scenarios and details here, we recommend that you contact us directly and ask what should be done for that particular trip or setting that you have in mind. And you can reach out to one of the pastors of the church, or you can reach out to, we have a training email set up, training@innisfilchurch.com. You can contact that email address, or just contact me, grab me on Sunday, call me, email me, whatever, and we'll work through you and work with you through it and figure out what needs to be done for that trip. Physical touch. Since we recognize that vulnerable persons need appropriate displays of affection that reflect a pure, genuine, and positive displays of God's love, appropriate touch of vulnerable persons will be permitted in age and developmentally appropriate ways. We recognize that innocence of vulnerable persons must be protected. So ministry partners or volunteers will be made aware that physical touch involving vulnerable persons must always happen in view of others and be done with wisdom and respect. So the appropriate touch of vulnerable persons will be permitted in age-appropriate and developmentally appropriate ways. For example, side hugs, shoulder-to-shoulder hugs, pats on the head, shoulder, or back, handshakes, high fives, arms around the shoulders, gently holding young children's hands or arms, and briefly touching faces, hands, shoulders, and arms. That's considered appropriate. Inappropriate touch consists of the following. For children from birth to 11 years of age, do not kiss a child or encourage a child to kiss you. Do not touch a child on the thighs, knees, or private areas. For diapering purposes, exceptions are made only when appropriately assisting in the washroom guidelines, as outlined in the washroom guidelines section. Do not use any form of corporal punishment with anyone of any age. Do not hold a child's face or chin area. Do not carry children who are age 4 and over, except in emergencies. Do not allow children who are age 4 and over to sit in your lap. With younger children, under 4, this could be permitted briefly, such as holding babies, comforting a toddler, and so forth. Do not engage in any prolonged physical contact with a child. For youth, do not kiss a youth or student in any way or allow them to kiss you. Do not touch the thighs, knees, or private areas of any youth. Do not give full hugs to youth of the opposite gender. Do not engage in prolonged tickling or any back rubs with youth. Do not offer over-exuberant affection. Do not engage in any prolonged physical contact. With mentally vulnerable adults, which is 18 and older, do not kiss a mentally vulnerable adult. Don't touch the thighs, knees, or private areas of any mentally vulnerable adults. Do not give full hugs to mentally vulnerable adults of the opposite gender. Do not engage in prolonged tickling or any back rubs with mentally vulnerable adults. Do not offer over-exuberant affection, and do not engage in any prolonged physical contact with a mentally vulnerable adult. Communication. So let's talk about communication for a few moments. Appropriate communication outside of a church setting. Ministry partners are encouraged to demonstrate purity, integrity, transparency, and accountability in all communications, especially with vulnerable persons. It's highly recommended that all communications with vulnerable persons be done in the open and that a record always be kept and copied to the ministry lead or a parent. Written communication is preferred for this reason. It's important to note that we highly discourage the use of any written communication that does not allow you to keep a record of your interactions. Going along with that, Snapchat or anything like that should never be used between a ministry partner, volunteer, and a minor under any circumstances. With children, adult ministry partners should never communicate other than in open face-to-face contact with children under the age of 11 who are involved in our ministries. If communication with a minor who's involved in our ministries absolutely must take place outside of the church, you need to obtain personal parental consent. And you're also encouraged to inform your ministry lead or pastor that you're doing so. For youth, our volunteers are encouraged to communicate only with youth of the same gender when you're outside of the church setting. While written communication is the preferred form of communication between youth and adult ministry partners, we recognize that phone communication may be needed at times. In those cases, we recommend that a record be kept and that the ministry lead be informed. Mentally vulnerable adults. So, you're encouraged to communicate only with mentally vulnerable adults of the same gender outside of the church setting. While written communication is again the preferred form of communication, we recognize that phone communication may also be needed at times. And in those cases, we recommend a record be kept and the lead of that ministry be informed. Let's talk about attendance for a few moments. So this is very important too. Attendance of children is to be taken each time a group or program is in session. These attendance records are to be kept on file permanently. In addition, a record needs to be kept of all of the volunteers on duty in each group or program. This record will be updated to reflect the accurate attendance, which is maintained with the record of attendance and is also kept on the file permanently. Any visitors to a class, like a parent or a sibling coming in to stay with a child for partial or the entire program in order to make sure they're settled and comfortable, any situations like that, any visitor also needs to be marked on the attendance list. We have to have their name recorded as having been in that setting at that time as well. In addition, the visitor cannot be left alone with other children at any time. They can only interact with their own child. Receiving and releasing children. Children are to be received in the designated room by the ministry partners, volunteers, and are not to be dropped off or left in a room without any of those volunteers present to receive them. Parents and visitors should not enter the designated room when dropping off or picking up their children, unless they need to comfort a crying or stubborn child. In this case, the parent's not to be left alone with other children at any time. Children are to remain in the room until the parent or guardian arrives to pick them up. Take note of this. Write it down. You're going to want to know this later. The receiving and releasing of children birth to age 6 will be monitored according to the following standards. Each child will have their name written on a list or signed in electronically. If tags are used, they may be wearing a name tag with a security number. If the tag is removed, the security number should be recorded in the attendance record. If tags are used, security numbers and identification cards should be taken from parents at pickup to be compared with the number that the child is wearing. If all the children have left except for one, ages 4 and up, The volunteer may walk the child to the parent so that no one is left alone with the child. We also have some very strict washroom guidelines to follow. So you are never to be alone with a child in an unsupervised washroom. And they are never to go into a washroom, or you are never to go into a washroom or stall with a child and shut the door. We have full guidelines to follow according to the age. So for babies and toddlers who are not yet toilet trained, we always strongly encourage that the parents change their own child's diapers. Diaper changing should only ever be done by a parent or by a volunteer in view of another unrelated volunteer when the parent cannot be reached. For toddlers and kindergarten children, which is 2 to 5 years, or toilet trained, one of the following must be adhered to. 2 ministry partners escort a group of children, or 1 ministry partner escorts a group of children with a hall monitor easily accessible for added assistance and security. Or the ministry partner, volunteer, may enter a stall or separate washroom to assist a child only under the following conditions. The outside door is propped open. The volunteer stands in the stall or doorway, fully visible to others. And the volunteer takes care to respect the privacy of the child. Children under the age of 6 are never to travel to the washroom alone. For elementary children, which is those in grade 1 to 5, the child must take a buddy of a similar age and the same gender, and have a ministry partner volunteer accompany them, but that person needs to stay outside the washroom door in the hallway. Let's look at the supervision of vulnerable adults. There must be at least 2 unrelated ministry partners at all events directed to vulnerable adults, and all visitations directed at mentally vulnerable adults, including home visitations and hospital visits. Programs for vulnerable adults must comply with established staffing ratios as follow. For on-site programs in our building, we need 1 ministry partner or volunteer for every 10 vulnerable adults. For off-site activities, we need 1 ministry partner for every 5 vulnerable adults. Both male and female ministry partners must supervise events that contain mixed genders. Caution and professional attitudes need to be observed in all interactions. Pastoral ministry, like counseling, should be limited to the professional section of the church, such as offices or boardroom, or public spaces, such as coffee shops. Now, when an incident does happen, we have a way to report that. Ministry partners are to complete an incident report form when a vulnerable person receives an injury while in their care. The form needs to be passed on then to the ministry lead so they can speak with the parents and complete any other forms if they're necessary. A parent and the ministry lead will be contacted immediately in the case of a severe injury or medical emergency. When reasonable grounds for suspected abuse are present, the ministry partner should complete a suspected abuse report form rather than an incident report form. This includes witnessing physical indicators of abuse and witnessing actual abuse of any kind. Reporting child abuse. So for the protection of our children, all allegations and or suspicions of abuse against children will be taken seriously and dealt with using the utmost care and strict confidentiality. Each ministry partner shall abide by the following steps. Step 1, you hear of an abuse. Step 2, you complete a suspected abuse form. And step 3, you report it to authorities. Now let's look at each of those in a little more detail. Hearing of suspected abuse. Upon hearing of potential abuse, the ministry partner should listen to the victim and remember these steps. What to do? Stay calm, listen, reassure, ask open-ended questions, say, I believe you, say, I'm sorry it happened, say, it's not your fault. Those are things you can do. What you cannot do is the following. Do not ask leading questions. Do not promise to keep it a secret. Do not promise to get them away from the perpetrator, as that is the job of police and family services. Do not say, everything will be fine now, because it may take a while for everything to be fine. So on the suspected abuse report form, immediately upon hearing of potential abuse or allegations of abuse toward a vulnerable person, the ministry partner will complete, and take notes of this one, you will complete a suspected abuse report form, which can be obtained from one of the pastors or ministry leads. The accused or any other parties should not be contacted at the point of completing this form. And take note of this, write it down. All completed forms must be handed over to the lead pastor or ministry lead. These forms are also to be kept permanently under lock and key, unless otherwise legally directed. So when it comes to reporting suspected abuse, ministry partners must notify a pastor that they'll be reporting suspected abuse to child and family services. The report should be done in conjunction with a pastor. If a pastor is the subject of the report, the ministry partner may approach another pastor or any board member to notify of filing the report. According to the Child and Family Services Act, a person who has reasonable grounds to suspect child abuse has a legal responsibility to report the suspicion and the information on which it is based to a society or appropriate authorities. So, according to Section 72 of the Child and Family Services Act, the duty to report is immediate. A person must report to authorities as soon as possible after observing signs or receiving a report of abuse, with a follow-up written report occurring within 72 hours. Direct. A person must first report a suspicion of abuse directly by phone or in person, not email or written form only. And ongoing. A person must report a suspicion of abuse that may be ongoing. So, first aid. There should be somebody trained in first aid at all church events. So if you're a ministry lead or you're planning an event, it's good to ask if there's one of your volunteers that's trained in first aid. Hopefully at some point we'll be able to facilitate some first aid training for more people so that we can ensure that we have people at these events that are thus trained. In the meantime, we do have first aid kits located throughout the building. And you want to write this one down. There's a first aid kit near the front windows in the main lobby of the church that's accessible to everybody. So that completes the training. Thank you. I know it was long and a little bit dry stuff to go through, but it's very important. This needs to be taken seriously because we have to protect our children and vulnerable people. And we have to protect our volunteers that are serving these people. So thank you for completing the training. Thank you again for your willingness to volunteer in the ministries of Innisfil Community Church. And once you've completed this video, please move on to the next step and complete the test that needs to be done and any necessary paperwork that you still have to complete. If you don't know the next steps, or if you have any questions, please email us at training@innisfilchurch.com. We'll answer your questions and get you any additional forms, paperwork that you may be missing or that you may need so that we can get this process completed for you as easily and as quickly as possible. You can also look for me anytime Sunday mornings. I could be up in the front, could be in the back, could be on camera, could be anywhere. Look for me, ask me any questions, and I'll get you what you need. Thank you, and God bless.